Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. Today's guest is part of a husband and wife real estate team. She has experience in teaching and in corporate sales. They pride themselves with their integrity, honesty, and strong work ethic that they put into every client. There's nothing more than they enjoy than finding that secret spot, that perfect home for each one of their clients. She has an eye for interior design and home staging, a perfect combination for a real estate agent. Let's welcome the owner of the team Territo, Gretchen Territo.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. This is wonderful.
I appreciate you coming on. I know this is step two, but technology, we correct that. So I'm going to jump right in and do my Remy Graphics commercial first, so I get that out of the way. Like I said, you've got a hot pink one in there, but Remy Graphics makes these mugs for me. She makes other laser engraved gifts. RemyGraphics.com, RemyGraphics.com. She makes one-offs. She's a real estate agent herself. She makes one-offs. So if you just want one personalized, which I think when it comes to giving away, I call these tchotchkes, actually, but these are not cheap.
Right.
There's this, you go to these shows and you have all the cheap stuff and everyone just like goes and gives it to their kids or throws it away. These are things they're not going to throw away, especially if it has their name on it. So put John and Sally, welcome to St. Augustine. They're never going to throw that away.
No, these are gorgeous.
Right.
Thank you so much.
No problem. I'm gonna apologize.
Oh, you're good.
This is Murphy's Law or something here today. There we go. There we go. Now we're back up.
Can you check
Everything's
my
on a
phone,
timer. Everything's on a timer. Okay, we're back. All right. Gretchen grows up in Portsmouth, Ohio.
Uh-huh.
Tell us a little bit about that, and obviously what led you to obviously meeting Matt, and what was your initial career aspirations as a young person?
Yeah, I don't know what my career aspirations were as a young person, maybe ballerina or astronaut, I'm not sure. But ended up kind of taking a windy road to real estate. Started my college career at Ohio University with a degree in sociology. Went to Myrtle Beach one summer with some girlfriends to wait tables and never went home. And so ended up getting my bachelor's from University of South Carolina and then got my master's from there as well. Was in education for a number of years and then transitioned to educational sales, which was really a great fit for me because I had a little gap between my undergrad and grad work where I was working in sales. And as I grew in my sales career, I was traveling further and further territory-wise. Mm-hmm. And that was great. So I was east of the Mississippi, planes, trains, and automobiles. Mm-hmm. And Matt and I were investing in real estate on the side. And he's a builder by trade. So we would buy a distressed property, live in it 2 years, renovate, avoid capital gains, sell, turn it over, do it again. And we got a call that we were going to be able to adopt a baby. So we decided to make our part-time gig, our full-time hustle.
Right.
And Matt stepped away into real estate ahead of me when our first son was born. And 2 years later, we got a call that our birth mother was pregnant again. And I looked at Matt and said, "We're selling the house. We're changing careers.
Right.
I'm stepping away, and I can't leave another baby and travel all the time." And so that's what we did.
Tell me, like I said, it's always interesting to all agents. Well, we do have some agents that are like 22, 23 years old that are doing really well, but they're an oddity. Mm-hmm. And obviously, growing up, usually the real estate agent was the spouse of maybe, like you guys. Mm-hmm. Matt was doing the real estate. You had the corporate job with the benefits. Mm-hmm. And that was generally, gave that person the comfortability because they had, the benefits being a big part of our lives. And obviously having those from corporate America makes things a little easier. Mm-hmm. But that was so, but what's always interesting to me is what you took from the previous careers, in teaching. What did you learn about yourself? And then getting into corporate sales, some of those things that you learned and you're doing that now you've taken and use in your real estate business today.
Yeah, I mean, I think corporate sales provided the structure for our business, how to use a CRM, how to have consistent marketing and emailing, and what it takes to foster and build relationships and kind of manage those relationships long term. So, definitely took those pieces away, but quite frankly, it was so much harder than I anticipated. I was pretty well respected in the educational sales field. I did it 20 years. So, I knew most of the competitors, I knew the products, I knew the reps, I knew the managers. And quite frankly, I knew the district administration too, superintendents, assistant superintendents. And so, coming with that level of experience and success into real estate, I thought that I was going to be able to just jump into real estate and make it fly. And
Right.
I ate some humble pie on that front. 6 months later, I was like, what have I done?
Right.
We have 2 small babies, 2 under 2, and we've only sold 1 house in 6 months. Like, what is happening here? Because I just felt there was going to be more of a translation from my past success into real estate. But people are like, this is my largest financial investment. This is where I make my memories, and I'm not handing it over to somebody who sold 1 house.
Well, I mean, you've experienced the market changing. I mean, you get into real estate in 2018 time period. Obviously, what we've seen here in the last 3 or 4 years, of the winds blowing in real estate as the market's changed and so forth. Matt got started. You had mentioned that to me previously that you felt it was the time he was doing well enough that you could make that leap and be at home with the kids and so forth. Was it in 2018? Did you have a change of winds in the market, or things just didn't continue as you guys had thought it would?
Well, that's an interesting
or predicted
question.
It would be.
I think part of the reason that Matt had so much initial success is we had our home for sale. And he was pretty much running open houses there 2 to 3 times a week. And our house at the time was waterfront home. It was a stretch for us financially, but it was a beautiful waterfront home. So he's getting all of these $1 million waterfront home buyers coming through the door, and was able to convert a lot of those. And while I was on the road, I was managing a lot of his back end stuff. So, he didn't know how to use a CRM, for example.
Right.
So I'm setting up the searches. And so I'm in a hotel room at night, and I'm setting up his searches and, sending emails on his behalf and setting up automations and things like that. And then we sold that house and bought a less expensive house so that we could put some money in savings to step away, and we didn't have $1 million buyers walking through the door anymore.
Interesting.
So that was, again, more of a learning curve, because I just kind of assumed that was going to continue, that there was enough of a base there, but it took a little while.
Well, let's talk about the humble pie part, because I think it's important, for those that are listening. Like I said, you're in a large office down there at St Augustine Atlantic Partners. We know 47% of the agents nationally did not even do a transaction in 23. Be interesting to see what those numbers come out here, with it being even technically slower nationally as far as real estate transactions in 24. But in relating to some of those those agents that you see when you go in the office that are just getting started, or some of them are 2 or 3 years in the business, and they're trudging through. Hopefully they've got a spouse that's maybe doing most of the support, hoping that something will kick in. But I imagine a lot of them come to you and ask you some of the questions. What are some of the questions that you're getting right now, and then what's the advice that you give?
I think in terms of being more market driven than more consistent from a sales pipeline, I think the questions are, how do you do that? And I think part of that is just time and consistency, and making sure that whatever you set up, you can continue, because once you do it, like we started a newsletter, it takes a lot of time and energy. Mikkel manages our newsletter, our amazing EA. She manages her newsletter, and my Aunt Barb, I have to give her a little plug too. she helps with that. But we started this newsletter, and you can't do a newsletter for 6 months and stop doing a newsletter, because people might not read it in your inbox, but when they don't see it, they're going to think something's wrong with your business. So I would say anything that you decide to do it until you master it, and it just becomes the way. It's just part of your process before you take on something else, because I think in real estate, we're always looking for the silver bullet, like what's going to be the big game changer. And it's not one thing, I don't think. I think it's a lot of things.
That's a solid advice there. I'm going to give the evaluate this. Matt likes to fish.
Mm-hmm. He does.
And, there's a lot of days you go out to fish, you don't catch anything.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully you have more days that's probably why you keep doing this, because hopefully you catch more on days than you don't catch anything.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the chance you have.
Right.
That's a risk you take. Just go out to spend whatever amount of hours, and you might not catch anything.
Mm-hmm.
But that newsletter is going out, and it's like you said, they may see it and not read it.
Mm-hmm.
But when they're ready to make a real estate transaction, or maybe they were just at a barbecue with a friend, and they're like, that newsletter pops up and reminds them, Gretchen and Matt are in real estate.
Yep.
And refer you.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, 99% of the time, they may never read it.
Mm-hmm.
It's only that 1% of the time when they're ready to do something, or maybe want to advise a friend and send a referral, that they might open that newsletter.
It's exactly that. And I tell new agents too, whatever your value add is, go with it. I just did a training at our office recently, and we were talking about value propositions. And as you know, we've got a pretty large staging operation. And so I think some of the agents were feeling a little defeated, like, I don't have the money to stage a whole house and not charge sellers for that. But one guy piped up and said, I bought myself a $200 pressure washer from Home Depot. And he said, I pressure wash the sidewalk as you walk up to the house, the driveway, and the front of the house for every one of my sellers. And then he posts these great videos of him out there, in the Florida heat, pressure washing these stoops.
What's the thing you're going to do in the Florida heat? Might as well pressure wash. Mowing the lawn sucks.
Well, that's true. It could be worse. He could have bought a lawnmower.
That's right.
But yeah, and so that's his value add, and the leverage that he gets from doing that, and people seeing his real estate agent really not be just a sign sticker, which I think is unfortunately some of the stigma associated with our business.
Yeah.
I mean, he made a $200 investment and has a huge value add. I mean, he scores some of these listings that are $1 million, and the houses are gorgeous. I'm like, how did you do this? And he's like, it's pressure washing. People see me out here pressure washing.
Right. That's actually brilliant.
It's brilliant.
It is brilliant, because no matter whose yard you go to, if it's been sitting there, if they haven't had a pressure wash recently, it's amazing. It makes the bricks or the concrete or whatever look brand new. At least in the pictures it does. Maybe if you're standing on top of it, you realize it's not brand new, but it's as good as it can look when you do that, and just makes it pop and just but you were talking about staging, and I think obviously you came to a point where you realized that staging was really moving the needle for a quicker sale, getting maybe full ask, or maybe a little over. When did you guys? How long have you guys been? Really noticed that and said, we need to make this part of our business.
It totally took on a life of its own. We started with a few pillows and blankets that I robbed from my house. Our first listing was a little old lady's house. She was moving into a retirement community, so it was very dated, very feminine, lots of flowers and ruffles and things. And so I thought, gosh, I'm just going to tuck this stuff into her master closet. She doesn't live here anymore. She doesn't care what I do. And just declutter a little bit, bring in some more modern pillows and throw blankets and bed linens. And we ended up selling her house and getting a really good number for it. So the next listing that we took was a vacant listing. And at the time I used to charge for staging, and I gave this guy a deal, and I said, hey, look, if I if I stage this and do it at a discount and we do a good job, will you write a great review for us? And so we did that. And that's how I got my first house of inventory. I made a lot of bad purchasing decisions because I didn't think about things like, oh, you probably shouldn't buy glass to stage with, you know?
Heavy furniture.
Yeah, heavy furniture, glass. I made some poor choices, but it gave me the springboard to do the next house. And now we have taken that in-house and have a staging department with one of our agents that manages it. And we do that because the results are so powerful. Now we have over 30 bedrooms of furniture. It's a whole operation, but probably our best example of staging is we had a listing that the seller hired another agent. They did not stage it. They really didn't do some of the things they said they were going to do, unfortunately. But we took the listing. We had it cleaned, staged. Mikkel's husband, who is a handyman extraordinaire, by the way.
That's good. That's good to have on the speed dial.
Yes. He took down a really weird wall for us. It was a temporary wall. But anyway, he did some work there. We staged it. With the previous agent, they had it under contract for $100,000 less than we sold the house for.
Wow.
And this is a $500,000 house. We ended up selling it for $600,000.
Wow.
And I think they had, after all expenses, she netted $96,000 more money.
I guess you probably got a pretty good review on that one.
I did. We got a good review on that one. So that's how powerful it is.
When you looked at it initially, when they're like, hey, this agent's not working out, we're not moving it, did you see that potential in it?
Yes. In fact, sometimes I feel like we do our best work. I shouldn't say best work. We have the biggest impact on houses that might be a little dated or might need a little bit of work, because those are the houses that when you put modern furniture in it and set up the rooms perfectly in terms of maximizing the space, making them look large, all of those things that go into staging, people can really see the potential. Yeah. As opposed to a house that's already perfect.
The statistics are there. That staging, you're going to get more dollars, sell it faster, and so forth. I personally know some agents that don't have as big as warehouse as you do, but that have some. Even you don't necessarily have to stage the entire house either, right? What is your strategy on especially the vacant homes? It's just staging the right rooms.
I'm a little bit of a purist when it comes to staging, and I want people to walk in and not feel like, oh, I want to buy this house. I want people to walk in and say, I want to be these people.
Right.
And so in order for them to feel like they want to be the people that live there, we stage outdoor spaces. I mean, one of the most important ones is outdoors, especially a pool. So, we have outdoor furniture. We have front porch furniture. It is every room, top to bottom. And this virtual staging, not a fan. I wish I could be, because I could unload that whole warehouse and save a whole lot of money. But the problem with virtual staging is you open the front door and your feeling is, wah, wah, wah. Like, this looked beautiful online, and then they walk in and it's less good in person.
Right.
I want the opposite. So for me, it's worth it, and it has to be the whole thing.
When you go into a listing appointment, now how long have you been doing the staging? That was kind of
it started from our very first listing.
Oh, so you've been doing it pretty much.
Yes,
a long time.
Yeah.
Okay.
We went from a small warehouse or a small storage unit to a bigger storage unit to 2 big storage units to ultimately the warehouse.
And then just to have the that attitude that you just said, like you like to go in and when the buyer walks in, that I want to be like these people. I want to live in this house the way, I imagine obviously if they have that attitude, they're already asking you, can they buy the furniture?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I think so. But the passion you have, so now with that success that you've had, when you go in to a listing appointment now and you tell them, hey, I need, my commission is going to be this much. Because you've made this part of your package. You're not charging above and beyond. Where I'm seeing a lot of agents discounting their listing that 0.5%, even 1% lower than what you're probably getting because you're showing that value, but it isn't costing you a percent necessarily, because obviously you're using the furniture in multiple houses, the expenses being spread out over time and so forth. But for you, the expense of having it moved over there, have someone help set it up and all that kind of thing is very minor, but you're making more money in the long run, even with you paying for the staging, which is yours, in that, versus a lot of these agents are discounting, and then they're discounting, and then their house is sitting there, and they are getting negotiated off the price and so forth. So they're losing out because they're not staging. Now they don't necessarily have to stage. I think you would agree. I mean, you're doing it on a level, but staging a home or partly staging the proper rooms is the statistics are there. That you're going to get more.
So for me, it's really about playing the long game, because I would say with the cost of the staging operation, there are definitely agents that are holding more profit on their sales than we are. We spend a lot of money for staging. We spend a lot of money for marketing. But for me, it's all about the long game. So if that seller has an experience where they are a raving fan of Team Territo, they're going to tell their friends, they're going to tell their neighbors, they're going to show their neighbors and their friends and family their listing and all of the things that we invest in related to a listing. So the twilight photos, the drone photos, the Zillow 3D tours, the virtual walkthroughs, like we do all of it for every listing, whether it's a $200,000 listing or a $2 million listing. They get the same level of service from us, because that person that has the $200,000 listing, it might be their first home. If I'm their real estate agent for life, whatever I've invested in that is well worth it. We have one customer now that's been connected to 21 transactions since I've been in the business, which is 6 years.
That's, for a lot of good agents, that's an entire year. Wow.
Just from them.
Well, I was trying to simplify it or dull it down a little bit just for that agent who might be listening. They may not be at your level, what you're doing in production wise and so forth, that how to get started. And it could be just partially, obviously, decluttering, doing being a little more I'm sure you've discovered every time you do it, every time you go in and give the proper, honest, integrity advice on a listing. I think too many agents are a little bashful, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think they're a little too bashful to have that straight up talk with like, hey, your house needs we need to get rid of some of this stuff. You need to pack up some of this stuff, and we need to put it in storage. How have you, progressed in that discussion? Or were you and Matt just like, were you just that kind of people right from the beginning, and it's just taken off for you?
I mean, I think we kind of were those kind of people from the beginning, because we were already doing it for ourselves. So we were real estate investors.
So you had confidence in...
Yeah, and so we knew that every house we lived in was a product. It didn't have that emotional attachment. So I wasn't even buying property as our primary residence based on the fact that it was, for us, our dream home. Right. It was, I have to make this work for 2 years. And so every decision I made related to getting that house ready to sell it was, what does this house lend itself to? So the one that was on Salt Run, for example, had a lot of nautical kind of stuff in it. I'm not a nautical sort of tchotchke kind of girl. But for that house, I wanted to really capitalize on the fact that when you looked out the back windows, you saw sailboats. So we kind of had those nautical colors and, not over the top, but definitely, had that feel. For example, Matt took our front door and cut a hole in it, and we put an actual sailboat porthole for our front door and a boat cleat. I mean, you open the front door and saw sailboats. It was appropriate. Yeah. So for us, it's just been my natural way because I was already doing it. So for sellers, we just go in and are just really straightforward. Like, this is not, once this goes on the market, this is not your house anymore. This is a product, and we have to sell it. And we have to get, quite frankly, you out of the way. And I will say, having a network of trusted subs like Mikkel's husband, who manages our handyman work, plumbers, electricians, having those people that can do any of those things and make it easy for the seller to plug and play really help. So one of the things that we do now that we could certainly not do in the beginning is we actually will front expenses for our sellers.
For like minor repairs and stuff? Yeah.
If they will turn over the keys and just let us manage it, because it's way easier, faster, more efficient, and cheaper for them if we just manage anything that needs to be done. Look, here are the things that need to happen. Don't be overwhelmed. Hand us your keys. I'll send you an occasional, email with what we're spending so that, you can approve and make sure we're on track. But go with it, because we can do it faster, cheaper, easier, and better, quite frankly, than the average seller.
All right. So you're lucky you have a lot of this close to you. Matt's, backgrounds in construction and that kind of thing. So he, to go in and analyze and a cost for, maybe a minor renovation or whatever, these things that you're talking about. Because you can't gain clients like that. They're going to give you the keys unless you come in with confidence. If you're not confident, like, oh my God, this is the first one, I want to be like Gretchen, I want to, you've got to come in, and obviously you're pouring confidence that you can turn this house, get them the best dollar for it, but we need to do some things. And you guys have the confidence that it's going to be done and done correctly, because Matt's going to be overseeing it. So because you have that close to it. So let's relate it to who someone might be listening to the podcast right now, who may not have a husband who's also knowledgeable in real estate, that's also in construction, but just having those people on speed dial. I remember a couple of years ago, I was interviewing Lisa Barton, and she does a lot of, obviously luxury listing out at the beach. And she talks about having those contractors on speed dial. You have to have relationships with those people, and hopefully a relationship that when you call them because you got a listing and it's going live next week, that they can actually get out and do what they need to do. Because you have that relationship. They're going to get out there, maybe work a little later or get up a little earlier to get your job done for you.
Well, and I think a lot of agents forget about building relationships with their vendor partners. So, and it works both ways. I mean, that vendor partner that comes to repair your roof, he probably knows a lot of people that are going to be selling a house. So most people think of their vendor partners as the partner that, services their customers, where in my opinion, it's your greatest source, or one of your greatest sources of referral business, because that person is already, has a vested interest in scratching your back because you've scratched theirs already. Right. So, with our new agents, when they're building a database, I always tell them to think about who is your dentist, who is your hairdresser, who cuts your grass, who services your pool, who is your mail person. All of those people should be in your database, because you already have at least some familiarity with them, and are already, helping keep their businesses alive.
Someone was talking, and I can't remember if it was on the show, if I was talking to someone outside of the show, but one of these influencers in real estate I know had given advice, because I've seen them talk about it. And that's when when you get to a point, and that's one of the things I want to talk to you about, is reaching that point where you had to start getting assistants and so forth, start growing the team. But a lot of people talk about like hiring a virtual assistant and so forth. And they said, no, actually hire an assistant, because their part of their role also should be to hopefully bring in 2 or 3 people to your business, 2 or 3 deals in the course of the year. To one, it helps obviously offset their cost, but it helps grow your business, because now you're also entering their circle, and they're influencing, and you're adding their connections, like you were just saying, to your database.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important piece. One of the things that we look at when we hire is how big of a sphere does that person have? And that's really important. And in a perfect world, they might have a slightly different sphere. So we're not opposed to hiring people. For example, we live in St. Augustine, but an agent that lives in Palm Coast, or an agent that lives in St. John's, or even Jacksonville, because we typically don't have a ton of overlap with our sphere. But pouring into those folks and making sure that you're taking time to go to coffee with your lenders like yourself, or, your home inspector, any of those relationships that you can build. I mean, sellers get home inspections before they list sometimes. So, that is a referral source for you. So making sure that those people are not just your vendors, but also your partners and a good source of business.
Right, right. Let's talk about the CRM a little bit here in our second take, because we talked about it a little bit at first. But we talked about the consistency and so forth. You mentioned a newsletter. Even when in bringing in the other spheres into this CRM, what are some things that you guys are having are on basically auto on your CRM that's going out to your spheres on a regular weekly? How often? Well, get in. Do you like to send stuff weekly or monthly? How often you have that working?
So we do 2 newsletters a month. That's pretty consistent, or I should say is consistent. So one is a community-focused newsletter. So we have a recipe of the month that's healthy, because a lot of our clientele is really into kind of healthy living and lifestyle, in our amazing, waterfront sort of environment. So one of those, it has community events, a local business spotlight, which gives us the opportunity to focus on one of those vendor partners, for example. And then our other newsletter is market focused, so real estate specific. But in both newsletters, we're cross promoting our listings. So sellers like that, because our newsletter has a subscribership of around 7,000. So
oh, wow.
It's pretty big, and local businesses like it, and the sellers like it too, because they're getting their listings shown. But we do that consistently, and then we also have some automation in our CRM that is tag driven. So if they're a buyer and they're in the warm category on nurture, then they get an email a couple times a month, in addition to what we have going out that's two-way personalized communication. But the customer doesn't necessarily, or the prospect doesn't realize that that's a drip, that it's not a from scratch email that's going out. So it's an important piece.
All right, you haven't had 7,000 clients in 6 years, or even if we had Matt's, hopefully you have 7,000 clients when you guys decide to retire, but 7,000 is a large number. So you must be adding people in that are not necessarily, you're adding your friends and family in there. I can only imagine, right? Yep. What is your attitude towards adding? And I ask this question because it makes me think of, I don't know, I'm trying to remember her name. It's going to come to me. It's going to come to me. But she spoke at the RE Bar Camp a couple of years ago, and she was talking about how she likes to add 8 people to her CRM every day.
Wow.
Yeah. Marky Lemons. Yes, Marky Lemons. We were talking that's her goal. So to get the 7,000, you guys had to really focus on and retaining and making sure those names are getting in there. Whether because I imagine some of these people are just, whether they're neighbors or whatever, they're not coming through on one of your open house QR code type things. You're adding them in there manually, consciously on a regular basis.
Yes. So during COVID, we did spend a good bit of money on internet leads. And the good thing about an internet lead is, as soon as they click through, there's a little checkbox that says they agree to receive email communication from us. So during that time, we were able to kind of build a good bulk of that. But then additionally, all the agents that come into the team, that stay with the team, their database goes in. So Mikkel's database is in, our other 2 agents, their database is in, our new real estate concierge, her database is getting built and going to come in, and they get tagged to her. So we always know who that person belongs to. But, if people are coming in with, in a perfect world, a minimum of 100, that database can grow pretty quickly, and then the newsletter gets shared too. So through all of the shares and then those folks registering to get it kind of takes an organic life of its own, which is great.
Yeah, because I imagine someone listening of, 7,000, I can never get to 7,000, but you're consciously retaining. I think the average, and again, whether it's a loan officer or a real estate agent, we're not disciplined enough But if you discipline yourself, like Marky Lemons is, to focus on, adding 8 every day. I'm sure there's days she only adds 3, but I'm sure there's other days where she goes to an event and she adds 12. And she's adding these people consistently to her database. She does other things, like has a lot of trainings and so forth. She's a lot of teaching for NAR and things like that. So she's doing stuff beyond her real estate business that are really, actually, I think her son's probably the bulk of that right now, her small real estate team. But it makes me think of they were talking. Well, it's probably been a couple of years now, but Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, he decided to get into tequila, put his name on it. Right? They created this tequila for him, put his name on it. They knew that he would sell so many, hundreds of thousands of cases of this tequila, because he has, huge Instagram following, YouTube, whatever it may be. And that's what you're doing as a real estate agent. You're creating a following with 7,000 and growing people in there. Every email that goes out, someone in there is doing something with real estate. And 7,000 people, right? I forget what the statistic is. It's actually there's many people actually in 7,000 that are doing something with their real estate, buying, selling, all the type of. So you're constantly touching. Now, is everyone going to read the email? I mean, we kind of talked about that before, but that's really not the point. As long as they're seeing the email and when they're ready, that's hopefully when they open it.
Well, I feel like it at least gives us a chance, right? So if they never get communication from us, we might not be on the radar. But if they get communication from us twice a month, if their next door neighbor, their best friend's a real estate agent, we might not get their business. But if that person doesn't sell their house and they decide to try somebody else, we might be their second or third choice. So I feel like even if we don't get the bulk of the business, or they may say, I really love my girlfriend, I'm going to use her for real estate, but when my neighbor wants to sell, I think they should really think about using so-and-so because they've got great marketing.
What do you think, it brings up an interesting subject to kind of take a little turn here. People feel there's going to be a huge fallout. And we don't know until the renewal, as the end of the year comes, especially in the mortgage world, it's the calendar year. You're renewing your license or not. So some people may be out, but are you starting to see, because even some semi-experienced agents that were doing well in 2021, 22, they're kind of fading out and they're getting out of the business.
Yeah, I mean, I think time will tell.
Which goes to the newsletter, because you never know when the neighbor is not doing the business anymore. That's what I'm getting at.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and we send our newsletter to real estate agents too. And that was one of the things that in the beginning I had to really think about, what is my purpose with this? And for me, the purpose was really, bottom line, to love on the people who love on us, especially like those business partners. And the recipe comes from a local business owner that has a health coaching business, so she's getting exposure. Community events, so those organizations and businesses and concerts and places that we love are getting some of those secret spots. They're getting some love. But then additionally, we're cross-promoting those listings. So for me, I'm helping my seller by showing their listings every couple weeks in this newsletter. So for me, I thought it doesn't make sense for me to exclude those agents. And now, to your point, some of those folks are stepping away, and we might be the person they recommend because they know that we do this and we do it consistently. Right. It's a really good service. So, I mean, I think anybody who wants to get our newsletter, let's bring it. Sign up and let us send it to you.
Because I know we covered it in take 1. Take 2, let's talk to talk about it, because I think it's important. The love on events that you do. Tell us about those.
So we made a decision, actually kind of post-COVID, after we had all of those internet leads that were sort of stockpiling in our database, of what kind of business we wanted to run. So we tracked every transaction we did in 2021, I think, 21 or 22. Tracked that back to its source, and we found that 85% of our business was either repeat customer, our sphere, or referral from our sphere. And so we decided that it didn't make any sense for us to make that large investment in internet leads when all of that, including open houses and listing leads and whatever, was only 15% of our business. So we decided instead to double down on our sphere. So we run quarterly pop buys for our customers, where we just take them a little gift, and we try to make it a little different portion of our customer base. We can't do it for every customer every quarter. It's just too much. But like right now, we're doing Christmas ornaments to all of our buyers with a picture of their house. Sorry, spoiler alert. I haven't gotten those yet, so those are coming. But those are coming out for December. We have another one already planned for Q1. So we take a little gift to each of our followers, customers, cheerleaders, advocates. But then we also do quarterly events, which sometimes are different every year. Some things we rotate around, some things are consistent. But our biggest event is we take all of our friends, we call them Friends of Team Territo, to Sykes Family Farm. And we have the barn, we have hot dogs and hamburgers and face painting, and the kids run around the farm and get on the rides and play with the animals and all of that stuff.
Right.
And we have a big raffle, which Mikkel coordinates with a lot of our local business partners to, give them fishing rods and a spa basket and I don't know what other baskets we have, but Pamper Me baskets.
Right,
So a bunch of these. And, we spend our money there instead of paying for internet leads that don't have any loyalty to us as a team to start with. So we'd rather love on the people who love on us, and it's easier.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, I think in sales in general, you've been in sales for 2 decades, and I can't remember when I haven't been in sales. I think we're in sales since the day we're born.
We are.
But when you, like you said, you track that information, and 85%, that's it's not, hey, it's 50, 60%, 85% of your business is coming from those people that are getting the free newsletter, right? That doesn't, you're paying for the CRM, and you have your girls are putting probably that newsletter together for you and that sort of thing. So there's a cost to it, but the amount of people you're actually hopefully touching breaks it down to just a couple cents, per newsletter it's going out. The cookout, you're going face to face with your people versus the Zillow. Hey, I'm going to give Zillow a bunch of money. Let's see what comes back. And I don't know these people, but to have that number says a lot about your business. I think to say 85% of your business, and the numbers that you're putting up, 85% of your business is coming from the, I would say, non-arm's length, to use a mortgage term, non-arm's length transaction, situate these people that are close to you, that are within arm's length.
Well, and it's the kind of business that we want. There's a warm intro. They are friendly. They're excited to hear from me. Where, you call an internet lead, they might hang up on you. They might say, I didn't sign up for this. Why are you calling me? And so much time invested in those phone calls where, Mikkel's been running a number of our events for a few years now, and it's kind of on autopilot. The template for the invite's already created. The sponsors for the raffle baskets are already there. We know what the menu is going to be. We have the tablecloths and all of that, which gets stored in the big warehouse. So we have those pieces, and yes, each one needs customized a little bit, but it's much easier for us because it's just part of our practice.
Right. I want to dabble into this because I've seen recently some agents try to start their own staging business. Now, it's because they're staging their own places like you are. But to go out and actually start servicing others is a whole nother thing. But now, because the complaint that I'm hearing is that staging is getting very expensive. So what is it about, obviously there's the physical capital investment of buying the furniture, but you guys have been doing it long enough that you're seeing, I've used this couch in 20 homes, right? So you're spreading out the cost, and as long as that couch can go on for years, and write off that capital investment. But what is really the expense? Why is staging, why is that the price point of staging going up so much that the agents are actually like wanting to open their own?
Well, I didn't do it for that reason as much. I did it just because I didn't like having to work within the confines of the parameters that the staging company set. Like, oh, you can rent the furniture for this amount of time, but then an extra month is this amount of time. And, having to coordinate when it had to be in and out, where for us, it was just easier to take that in-house. And quite frankly, furniture wasn't quite as expensive when I bought a number of my pieces. I mean, prices have definitely gone up, but I source most of our stuff from Facebook Marketplace, so that keeps costs low.
You're finding just people selling quality furniture.
Pieces.
Yeah. You just go and grabbing one-offs here and there.
I do.
Yeah.
And I try to buy like slip-covered pieces for my sofas because I can take the slip cover off and wash, because it's going to get dirty when it goes in and out of a warehouse in a moving truck, 6 or 7 times in a year. It's just happening. So, I would say, though, for somebody thinking about it, I used to stage for other agents, and I went away from that because of a number of reasons. One, agents were super picky about, oh, I don't like that nightstand. Can you take that back and bring me a different one? And it was just, it was a lot.
Yeah.
Things get damaged. And then you go into and your side table is not assembled anymore. And things get broken, whatever. And then anyway, but the main reason for me is just my inventory wasn't available when I wanted to stage my own listing.
Right.
All of the good stuff was kind of cherry picked for other agents. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense.
Right.
I think it's smart for agents to think about ways that they can add value to their businesses and whatever that means for them. But staging it was natural for us, but I would say to a new agent to be thinking about what their strength is or what their value prop is. I mean, for us, we were already kind of staging our homes to sell. So we had that experience and I felt like it was a strength. But for somebody else, it might be a different strength that they bring.
Right. I'm going to transition into this last 10, 15 minutes here. I think one of the biggest challenges for agents, and I use the term a lot, they reach a lid. They go out there, you had your husband, you guys were kind of partners kind of from the beginning, but as a solo agent all by themselves, they start to get, I think it's between 7 and 8, maybe 9 million. Something's as low as 5 or 6. I think Russell, he thinks it's like 5 or 6 million that they kind of start reaching. They max out of what they can do themselves, from the transaction coordinating assistant, all these extra things that are out there besides obviously the stereotypical what people think agents are doing. There's all that other stuff when they're doing all of it, whatever that number of transactions, but I'd say somewhere between 6 to 9 million, they're maxed out. When did you guys get to a point where you're like, when did you make your first hire? Who was your first hire? What did you get advice on what the first hire was? It's a transaction coordinator or assistant, or was it another agent? Because you have several agents also. How did you start creating, when the team start going beyond you and Matt?
Well, I made some mistakes. I wanted to hire buyer's agents right away because I was thinking, their sphere, they can bring their sphere in, they're going to bring deals into the team. But most agents that are going to join a team are not, either they're coming in without a sphere or they're coming in without knowing what to do with that sphere. And so they require a lot of training and a lot of support. So I kind of burned through some buyer's agents in the beginning. And Russell actually said, Keller's got a model for this. Maybe you need to think about leveraging some of these resources that Keller has to teach you how to build a business. And so we did that. We hired an admin part-time who was an agent herself, just to be able to do some of our hourly work for us, the things that we were not good at and didn't like.
Which would be like?
The accounting piece of it, how you actually get paid, all of the uploading all of the documents into the Keller Williams system, getting your DAs in and signed. I'm not great at that. Matt's not great at that. So some of those admin things. And then we realized that those things freed us up to spend our time doing the things that were revenue generating and also help to grow our business and play to our strengths and that we like to do. So since then, we've really tried to be consistent with the Keller model, and I have a great real estate coach as well, and he really helps me to think about how the business should grow and not just where we need to be from a goal setting perspective in terms of number of transactions or volume, but do we have the pieces in place that when we grow to that level, that we can support that level of business without our quality of service falling. So his philosophy is somewhat different, and instead of, having these goals that we don't have the structure to meet, he said, build it, and then you can leverage and grow there. So, really putting the cart before the horse.
You said in there, obviously what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, which, statistics, the studies are out there. If you're good at it and you enjoy doing it, you are an expert at it. It's just your wheelhouse, right? What are some of those things that you and Matt enjoy doing and you're good at? Do you feel by leveraging other people to take on some of these, we'll just call them admin tasks, these nonsense, that has allowed you guys really just to double down and grow your business?
Well, I can really speak to Matt's strengths. He is, I don't get to go into our homes with a lot of buyer's agents, so I don't know what all of them do, but I will say Matt's construction background makes him such a good buyer's agent because he really helps people to see the difference between a lipstick on a pig situation and a diamond in the rough. So we have buyers, for example, that are relocating into our area, military retiree, and she had all of the check boxes for what she wanted in her next home. But Matt said, underneath all of it, I'm concerned that when she gets here, she may not love this neighborhood long-term forever. Because she kept saying forever home, forever home, forever home.
You have people in their 20s telling us that it's a forever home.
Forever home.
Yeah.
And he said, but she's just had a career where she's moved 17 times. This is, in her
It's not a big deal to her.
Her last house, right?
Yeah.
So he said, instead of having all of this pressure to get it perfect, one of his requirements for her was that she close with good equity so that if she doesn't love it, he has set her up so that she can move to what might be for her forever home when she knows the area better, she knows the neighborhoods better, that she can be in that dream home and have a good wealth building kind of equity piece that's built into it. So I would say, to answer your question, it's having that builder mindset from Matt, that he can really support those buyers in. Well,
he's obviously relating to them in some way, shape, or way. He's communicating that to them, because I think some people might have that eye, but obviously it goes back to that confidence thing, right? To walk in, as we were talking earlier, with your sellers and the confidence, say, we're going to stage this, give us the keys, we'll take care of it, and you'll be happy. You get those because you're confident. He obviously is confident in his translation to them of what the underlying value in buying an existing home, say, versus, because I know you've probably, if you do enough transactions in Northeast Florida, we all have listings in neighborhoods that they're still building. And that listing is just sitting there because the builder's giving away everything right now to get business, and you're competing against that because somebody moved into a neighborhood that they found out they don't really like it. They don't like their neighbors, and then it's tough right now because it's not like in 2020 where I think we had a lot of internal moving, from one neighborhood to another, because the interest rates are 3%. It's like, oh, I'm paying 3%. I'll go over here and pay 3%. No big deal. Now you're paying 3% and you're going to go buy a new home and you're going to pay 6.5%, 7%. Yep. Whoa, hold on a second. I don't want to do that move. Yeah.
Whole different story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just having those conversations and being transparent about what that looks like and really understanding what their next move is. I think you and I talked about that a little bit earlier, but understanding not just your wish list. Everybody's really quick to tell you, oh, I need a fenced yard, or I need, 4 bedrooms or whatever, but really thinking about what their long-term goals are, both from where they're going to live perspective, but also their financial picture and their thinking about real estate as an investment in addition to just a place that they make their memories. So having a good understanding of all of those pieces, I think, helps us to help advise them and maybe find a home that's a little outside potentially of what they might be looking for, but understanding that how that's going to be a springboard to what they want to accomplish long term.
Right. That piece, I think, is where a lot of agents don't discuss. Is really looking beyond. Hey, all right, what about when the kids are out of school, right? Maybe the kids are teens now. Well, in 4 or 5 years, you're not going to have any kids. Is this, you moving in, or what are we going to do? You need a bigger home now because you got them all in the house, but in 4 or 5 years, they're out. What is your next move?
Yeah. Or if you're going to buy that bigger home and your kids are going to be out, do you want to think about having a master downstairs, for example, so that, do you want to run up and down the stairs all the time? Do you need that teen hangout space? Is that going to serve you a purpose? Or, is it just going to be wasted space when they move out? So all of those, conversations, I think, give us the confidence to advise customers well, because we know what they're trying to accomplish, not just their wish list, which, I'm still surprised sometimes at what people say they want in a house and what they actually buy and how different those things are. So if you don't understand what they're trying to accomplish, you're going to miss half of what might work for them anyway, because their box checking is not often what really is.
How much of a buyer consultation was Matt doing prior to August? You guys always did a really, do you guys like to have a sit down or at least a Zoom call? Is this something you've always done?
Absolutely. I can't imagine not doing it. Now, our buyer's consult has shifted a little bit because now we have to spend more time talking about commissions than we did before. But in terms of going through it and really getting to the root of what that person is trying to accomplish is always been a big part of what we were doing.
Is your mindset in that, and it goes back, this is something I believe, I try to remember, I had an agent on not too long ago that when they first started, there was just like going transactional, just go to next transaction, but not realizing that from the moment you meet that person to closing, and then what happens after closing, they're like their own little mini billboard for you. And that the moment you have the opportunity to say, hey, let's meet and have coffee or come to the office, wherever it is, but to sit down and have that consultation and just talk about these things versus rushing out and going, seeing a home, hey, let's make an offer, let's get in being so transactional. The point of realizing you're actually marketing. You've got this person in front of you, but that person is a billboard, and you're painting a billboard now that hopefully is going to stand up for you for as long as that person lives in St. Augustine. You know what I'm saying?
There are a lot of successful agents and teams that do run a very transactional business. Every portion of the transaction is leveraged out. Lots of internet leads, really a smile and dial process, and it's very systematized and very effective. It's just not the kind of business that we wanted to build. On that continuum, we basically were thinking, are we a fast food business or are we a fine dining experience? And for us, we decided that both in terms of our price point and our existing sphere, I think I shared with you earlier that our first listing was our home, which was on the water, and it was a stretch for us financially, but it did bring in, $1 million buyers at the start of our career. So our foundational customer base was one that was at that price point, and I feel like all of those pieces together kind of went the luxury experience route. Doesn't necessarily mean the luxury price point route, but created for us or taught us how to create that luxury experience for every buyer and seller. So that's the way that we've chosen to operate.
Is that something you think you evolved in your corporate career of being that hands-on, to those teachers, those administrators you're trying to sell the software to, that you really had to get into their world?
I think so. I mean, coming from corporate America, you asked earlier as a new agent, how did we have that grit basically? I mean, in corporate America, it's just the way. You have to make X number of calls. You have to set X number of appointments. You have sales goals that you're accountable to really clearly. And, lots of conversations about performance related to that. So for us, for me, it was just always the way. And then in educational software sales, lots of sales training in corporate America additionally, but then you had to have a consultative approach because you had to understand, for example, kids' test scores, district-wide, how their Title I schools or low-performing schools were doing, all of those different segments of their student population and how they wanted to see success there to figure out, with the software, for example, where it needed to go. Is it for every student? Is it for second language learners? Is it for, students that needed reading intervention? So, there was just a consultation was a huge part of it.
Because every county, and I imagine every, within the state, all have a different need in that area because there's different teachers. So they might be strong in whatever aspect over here, but weak in others, and vice versa in the next county over, because it's just the way their teachers are, or just their ideology or whatever that's in that region.
Sure.
You go to another state and they have a whole different problem. But you have the same software you're selling them.
Right.
So you got to find out what they're need.
What they're trying to do and where to put it, or maybe you start with a small population of students, you test it out, you see how it goes one year, and then switch the next year. So that whole process was just the way that I was trained to sell. And I think Matt is just naturally a really good listener and a good at rapport building and good at reading between the lines, because as a builder, although he doesn't feel like it, he's been selling his entire career as well. And making somebody's vision for a renovation come to fruition, you have to really dig deep. And so for both of us, I think we had this natural, well, maybe in my case more learned, but consultative sales approach. So it was just, just the way we.
No, I think you've come to the conclusion, and anyone listening here, is the understanding that every home and every homeowner is different. We know it from on the loan side, their financials are different. Where they've come from, how much the savings they have, where their income comes from, how their income is made. It's different in every transaction. Where obviously in your corporate sales, you might have been dealing with a school district or a state. You go to the next state or next county, next school district over, and their needs are total. It's every house on that street is different, and spending that time with each and every homeowner, to me, by spending that time like you guys have, you've put up all these billboards all over St. Augustine that are walking billboards for referrals for you.
That's what we're trying to do. Raving fans. I mean, one of the questions I ask is in my buyer's consult and my listing appointment is, what is it going to look like for us for you to become our raving fan? So what are the things that we would need to do at the end of this for you to say that you are a Team Territo raving fan? And they usually tell us, and it's usually part of our practice anyway, so it makes it easy, but we ask them what that's going to take, because if they have unrealistic expectations for what we're going to accomplish, I want to know then so we can talk about it first of all. And if it's something different that's easy for us to implement, we're gonna try to make it happen. So either way, it's a good conversation starter for us.
All right, I'm going to finish with this last question.
Uh-oh.
This is our opportunity to give her elevator speech or whatever. Imagine you go to socials, maybe you're at the Chamber of Commerce or something like that. Why should someone use Team Territo?
So
not that we haven't talked about it for the last hour, but I want you to sum it up in 30 seconds.
I feel like I've had lots of opportunities to talk about how great we are, but thank you for that. I would say for us, the big things are, one, that the staging is a huge part of our business. That's definitely the value add for our sellers. For our buyers, the value add for us is that you've got a builder's know-how in your pocket, so you really know what you're getting, and that's huge for them. And then for the investor, that we have been in the investor shoes. We know what those metrics should look like for success, whether it's a short-term rental, a long-term rental, new every two, a subdivide. Matt and I have literally done we've done all of those, but almost every type that I can think of, at least on the residential side. So we've got experience firsthand there, and we're going to go into that with a discerning eye. But I think overall, it's just that we genuinely care in having that customer for life.
Yeah.
So whatever that takes, whatever that looks like, that's what our goal is for going into that initial conversation and then, beyond the closing of that transaction.
Yeah, I've often thought of advertising the podcast, especially to the areas that we know statistically what areas move to our area.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously New York is a huge
Mm-hmm.
contributor. Advertise there and advertise that I know all these agents because I've interviewed them all and how I can match them up. And listening to you guys and agents that are listening right now. You and Matt have expanded your vision of real estate from a 30,000 plus foot level because, one, he just, happened to be in the construction business. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if someone wasn't in the construction business, you can't really change that.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously an ad that he personally brings in, but the fact that you've dabbled yourselves in this mindset you had in the beginning, like, hey, I'm going to live in the house for 2 years and then we're going to sell it. And, you were building yourself up from a wealth standpoint, having
Mm-hmm.
that kind of mentality, attitude towards that. But like you said, so many agents don't have their own investment properties. And I've had many times in the loan world, talk to agents and they, I got a buyer who's an investor, and they think it's like a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just another buyer. He's looking differently now. He's going to have his different needs and wants of what he's looking for. You need to be an expert in your area on, hey, what is this neighborhood getting for rents? What is the Airbnb situation? If you're at St. Augustine Beach, it's restricted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people think Airbnb's oversaturated right now. You've got to have that knowledge, and Team Territo has it. I can't think. Obviously, the staging and design, that's just icing on the cake. But it seems to have all come together. I can't think of anything that you guys don't have some experience, but you have enough experience and an overall picture that if something new came in, you could absorb it in real quick because you start putting the pieces together.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think the bottom line is Matt and I played to our strengths. So, I was already staging our homes. Matt was already a builder. But I think I shared with you earlier, I did a training at the office recently where a brand new agent, young agent, I shouldn't say brand new, bought a $200 pressure washer and was pressure washing walks and driveways and front stoops for customers. And that was pretty much his only marketing. The neighbors would come out when he was pressure washing, and they would be like, hey, what are you doing? And
Getting the house ready.
Yeah, getting a house ready. And he's got beautiful $1 million listings that he gets from his $200 pressure washer. So, I don't think that, an average person starting out in this industry needs to have all of the same pieces that we did. They just need to think about what they like to do, what they do well, and how they can differentiate themselves in the market.
A little elbow grease.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has it. And that's what to me, the pressure washer,
Mm-hmm.
the pressure washer is. And he's separating himself. He's like, how can I add value? Well, I like pressure washing. Let me go get a pressure washer because he must like pressure washing.
I would hope so.
But it's those little things, and I'll brag on my wife a little bit. She had someone write a review because they saw her out there still picking the weeds out of the flower bed, and the house was already under contract.
Mm-hmm.
Where most agents would have ran away,
Mm-hmm.
but she was still picking the weeds. So she knew that just so when that buyer walked up for the final walkthrough or whatever, it just,
yeah.
How fast can the knife go through the, hot knife through butter? And that's just by removing any possible buyer's remorse or things like that, but just having foreshadowing all those things.
All of those things.
Yep.
And I mean, and you're doing it for us.
I appreciate it. All right.
All right.
Gretchen, I appreciate